Welcome to the Root Cause Business of Medicine podcast, where we explore what's broken in healthcare and what we can do about it. I'm Dr. Erik Lundquist, and I've been practicing functional medicine for the past 15 to 20 years. I'm excited to co-host this podcast with my brother, Dr. Davin Lundquist,
who's just beginning his journey into functional medicine. We come from different points on the path, but we do share a common goal. We want to rethink how medicine is practiced and help others do the same.
The U.S. healthcare system is in crisis, rising costs, declining outcomes, and physician burnout at an all-time high. But we found a different way, another way, a better way.
On this podcast, we dive into real stories from medical professionals who've stepped away from the traditional model, kind of like me, and have found a new purpose in integrative, functional, and alternative approaches to care.
These are authentic conversations with practitioners and friends who've redefined success, not just for themselves, but for their patients and communities.
Whether you're a clinician feeling stuck, a student seeking direction, or just curious about what is possible,
you're in the right place. This is the Root Cause Business of Medicine podcast. So today's our inaugural podcast. We're super excited to be doing this and sharing our own experiences first, and then we'll be interviewing a wide range of individuals who have really been successful in the integrative and functional medicine world. Just a little background on why we are doing this podcast and how we got started. I am on the faculty for the UCI's Integrative and Functional Medicine Fellowship, and I'm in charge of the business course. And so as part of this, I realized that as I was gathering information for the curriculum, I wanted to interview some of my colleagues and friends and learn from them to be able to share with the fellows what works, what hasn't worked, what some of their challenges are and have been. And more importantly, to find out what it was that allowed them to overcome the fear of that first step, because the first step is always the hardest.
Yeah, and interestingly, I hope to join that list of successful practitioners who have, branched out and launched into a new path in functional medicine and integrative medicine. I spent 20 plus years as a primary care doctor in a traditional setting. I had many different roles, including, a chief medical information officer, where I was focused on helping, guide our health system to make decisions way back when we were transitioning from paper charts. Meaningful use, some of you may recall those fun times. And, over the course of my career in that aspect, I noticed that a lot of physicians were getting burned out from the technology, from having to use technology. And then I think sort of concomitantly were an increase in regulatory and insurance requirements to try to, with good intentions, improve the experience for everybody. But oftentimes all those requirements just were additional tasks and burden that fell on the doctor, who was already struggling to sort of get used to this new electronic world.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And, I think the hope was that technology would actually enhance and improve the way that we were able to practice medicine. I think with AI, we're starting to see the possibilities of how that actually could be. But certainly the initial aspects of electronic medical records and then having all of the regulatory aspects about what has to be included in the documentation in order to meet appropriate criteria to be reimbursed for the service that you're providing only added to already the dissatisfaction that a lot of us were already feeling in medicine with the inability to really practice medicine for the reasons that we went into it. So today we're actually going to get started with our first guest, who happens to be somebody that you know pretty well. Is that right, Davin?
Yes. Today I'm going to be interviewing you, Erik, and we're going to get your story first. Obviously you've been in this space a little bit longer than I have, as I just mentioned. I've only left the traditional model, a large health system practice, about a year and a half ago. So I'm pretty early on my journey. And I would say that, I'm still kind of in that first step, wondering if my foot's going to land on something solid yet. So maybe we'll start with you first today. I'm going to ask you some questions about, when you took this leap, which was many years ago, and kind of, all aspects around, how you made that decision, what challenge you faced, and why you did this and where you are today. And I'm just excited to, even though you and I have had this conversation a few times, I think we're going to structure it a little bit more formally today, and I think it will benefit the listeners and ultimately, those future successful physicians who you'll be coaching and teaching at the fellowship program.
Great. Well, I look forward to sharing my story, and this has just been a great journey. And one of my passions for sure has been helping other providers, practitioners, individuals in the healthcare industry do something similar to what I'm doing, or at least get to where they're actually practicing medicine the way that they want to be practicing medicine. The passion behind it. And I think all of us went into medicine because we wanted to help others and to see other people live healthier and happier lives. And it just wasn't quite there based upon the traditional training and the conventional way that we were practicing medicine, for sure.
No, I totally agree. And I think certainly that was the impetus for me as well, right? Like trying to find a better way. There has to be a better way, both for me as the provider, the physician, and for my patients to get more out of the healthcare system and get more out of that relationship with their doctor, right? And so for me, in addition to getting a chance to work with you, my brother, which we've talked about for years, but we've never really been able to figure out a way. I was, knee deep in the administrative side and the technology things. And so, but I was kind of watching you from afar and kind of seeing, hey, there's something to what he's doing. And when I really get back to full-time medicine, I kind of had in the back of my mind that I wanted to adopt and learn from what you were doing and kind of join you on that path in functional medicine, integrative medicine. And so for me as well, this podcast, I appreciate the opportunity to join you on this journey because I think you and I share a vision of not only connecting one-on-one with our patients and really making it personal, but also if there's a way that we can share or scale the knowledge that we're learning with those patients in a way that makes it more affordable and accessible to more people. And so we're taking the time, maybe not our first choice to be in front of a camera, but we're going to do it because we do believe that if we can get this content online and join many of our colleagues who are ahead of us in this space, that we can make a bigger impact. We can reach more people in doing it. So with that, yeah, Erik, why don't we back up a little bit and let's just talk about, even before you made the jump, like what is it that drew you to medicine in the first place?
Yeah, interesting question. I think it stemmed from a time when I was serving a mission for our church. I was down in Brazil doing missionary work, and I was really enjoying the aspect of being able to help people from a spiritual sense, right? Help give them some more hope and build on their faith, help them see the world and their lives in a brighter light. But there was so much deformity and debilitation down in Brazil, particularly in Rio de Janeiro. And I just was bothered by the fact that I could do something for them spiritually, mentally, even emotionally, but I didn't have the knowledge or the capabilities to really help them from a physical standpoint. And I think that's where it first kind of drew my interest in helping people from that aspect that drew me into medicine. I originally was thinking I wanted to be a physical therapist, and actually did some interning in undergraduate training with a physical therapist. But ultimately, I realized that I didn't want to be limited just to the physical rehabilitation of individuals, but I did want to take care of that whole person from a spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical standpoint. And I felt like medicine could really help me do that. And I followed a family physician near our hometown in Utah, where we grew up, um, Dr. Cosgrave, and just really enjoyed how he was delivering a baby and then going and talking to a mother and then talking to an elderly man and then doing some pediatric work and then doing some hospital work and doing some minor surgeries, doing some ortho, sports medicine. It was just such a variety to what he was doing. I was really intrigued, and I loved how he could see the individuals going through their generational phases, right? From being children that he helped deliver to now them getting married and having kids of their own. And that really, really intrigued me and inspired me into medicine and wanting to be that type of practitioner. So I went to medical school with the idea of being a family practice practitioner.
I want to interrupt you because I think it's interesting that you started out your career in medicine with kind of that holistic viewpoint, probably not even realizing that when you ended up at a traditional medical school, that wouldn't necessarily be the way that they would teach you, at least not in the beginning. But I have to just also piggyback off of Dr. Cosgrave, only because, people will notice we'll have a lot of similarities in our stories. We're only a year and a half apart. We grew up with a lot of the same interests. And Dr. Cosgrave is one of those other common points on the path, right? And I just want to say what I remember with him was, he'd been in that town forever, right? And like his patients would come into the room and, he'd be talking about like you just got back from your trip, or how's so and so, asking about the aunt, the grandma, the grandkids, and I remember I had this thought like, oh my gosh, this guy gets to hang out with his friends all day long. Oh, and by the way, practice a little medicine, on the side. And that was something about family medicine that really struck me.
Yeah, no, it was really true. I do remember when I went back and asked him for a letter of recommendation for medical school, though, that he did say that I was the smarter of the two of us. So I just,
Yeah,
wanted to
yeah,
throw that out there.
yeah. Well, that tracks because he said that I was the dumber one. So I guess that's fair. At least it wasn't Dumb and Dumber. It was at
No,
least
no,
one of us was smart, at least.
no. He did say you were better looking, though. So he would have been happy if you'd married his daughter, I think. So,
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's another story that we probably don't have time for today.
but it's interesting you talk about the holistic mindset. When I actually got into medical school, by the time I'd completed my second year, I was completely disenchanted. I did not anticipate, our undergraduate training was in kinesiology, which was really the study of human performance. And we learned about how to optimize the human body as a machine in terms of performance. And so we learned about biochemistry, we learned about molecular biology, we learned about food, nutrition, and how it impacts exercise and the different aspects of functional exercise. So I really thought that when I went to medical school, I would just build on that training and
Right? Just dig deeper, right?
yeah, really get a sense for like, okay, now I have all the tools, right? We were learning kind of the basics in undergraduate, but now I have all the tools that I can, and it was not even anything close. It was, we had that big, huge, thick pharmacopoeia book. We had to learn all the drugs. We had, the first year we learned about how everything went right in the body from a physiology standpoint. The second year was how everything went wrong in our pathology courses. And I just wondered if this was the right decision. And I remember going to a family medicine conference for residents and med students. during between my second and third year. We still had a summer that year, and I sat in some lectures, and then I noticed on the program that there was a lecture being given. And I don't remember his name, but it was on integrative medicine. And I thought, oh, what's integrative medicine? So I went and sat in this lecture, and he's talking about nutrition and lifestyle and how you can help improve outcomes and do preventative medicine, and you could use nutritional supplements to help enhance overall cellular function. I was like, okay, there's still hope for me. If I can get to the point where I can do what he's doing, then I will stay in medicine. So that's really what kind of kept me in medicine. Was at some point I knew that I was going to be practicing that type of medicine, but it was still another eight plus years before I would get to the point where I was actually able to put that into practice.
No, that's that's the first time I've heard that part of the story. I didn't realize you had been exposed to an integrative medicine, concept that early. Yeah, that I love that.
Yeah, I remember the American Academy of Family Physicians put on that. It was in Kansas City, Missouri, and they put on this annual conference for the med students and residents, and I was super grateful.
I mean, this was late '90s, right? I mean,
Early
or
early 2000s, right? Because no, yeah, it'd been when did we? Yeah, I graduated from med school in 2000, so it'd have been like 98. Yeah, 98.
I mean, yeah, that guy was a little ahead of his time. That's great that you had that exposure. And so I guess from there, the seed was planted. And then you went on to do, further training in the Navy, right? In terms of residency. Um, and and then eventually, yeah, tell us the rest of the story. So how did, you kind of followed maybe a fairly typical, other than the military experience is maybe slightly different for those that haven't done that. But for the most part, it's a pretty common experience in terms of training,
Right,
see
right.
the job and then, first practice, et cetera. But yeah, maybe talk us through that. And even, you were able to see medicine in another country even, right?
Yeah, so I did my family medicine training. I joined the Navy while I was in medical school to help pay for medical school. And so I did a family medicine residency program at Camp Pendleton. And at that time, it wasn't guaranteed that you would go through the residency program consecutively. So I did my internship, and then I was pulled out and spent 2 years with the Marines. I was during that time that I did a tour in Iraq as a battalion surgeon, and I saw some pretty amazing feats and interesting situations. That is probably a story from another time. But I came back from my residency or from this tour with the Marines and spent 2 years as a second and third year, completing my family practice residency in 2005 at Camp Pendleton. At that point, I went overseas to the Navy hospital in Italy. We got to spend 3 years in Naples at the support site, the Navy support site for NATO. And that was a really special experience. And then came back to California. At that point, I decided to get out of the Navy and joined a family medicine conventional family medicine program. I was really excited. They did full range family medicine, from deliveries to flexible sigmoidoscopies to minor surgeries. It was similar to what I had been trained in the Navy, and I thought this was going to be great. Well, it ended up being a lot more work and not as much pay as I had thought. And my appointment times were getting shrunk to 10 to 15 minutes per appointment. And it just started to become a real drag. Well, we also had with us a functional medicine nutritionist, Wes Youngberg, who was seeing patients with us. And so we could refer to him for nutrition and lifestyle counseling. And he kind of introduced me to the concept of functional medicine. At this time, I was already pretty interested in integrative medicine. During residency, whenever I had to give a case presentation, it usually involved some study around a nutritional supplement or some environmental toxin or something that was impacting our patients from a holistic perspective. So I was already still kind of thinking that this was what I wanted to do. So I was really intrigued by having him in our practice, and I started to learn a lot more about how to use nutritional supplements with our patients and augmenting their lifestyle, and just seeing the impact and the powerful influence he was having on our patients. Well, he ended up leaving the practice, and I left shortly after that, and partnered with another family medicine group. They were more open minded. They allowed me to do nutrition counseling with my patients. They allowed me to see 20 to 30-minute appointments, and it was fun. I was enjoying my time, but then I got to the point. Yeah, go ahead.
For people who may be, new to this space, like I was not that long ago, um, I think maybe you could define for us the difference between functional medicine and integrative medicine, because I think sometimes I used to get those confused, or I thought they were the same thing, or, so what are the nuances or the differences between those definitions, if you don't mind, real quick?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point. So integrative medicine is kind of a big umbrella because basically what it is doing is it's taking conventional medicine or traditional medicine the way that we were trained, but now we're incorporating multiple different aspects of either Eastern medicine or lifestyle medicine or nutritional medicine or energy medicine, and all of these things kind of then coalesce into what we call integrative medicine, or a lot of us just call good medicine. And that's really kind of this big umbrella. Now, within that umbrella, there's these different spokes like chiropractic or Ayurvedic or naturopathy or lifestyle medicine, like I said. But functional medicine is really looking at the root cause behind what is happening with the individual. So, for example, if you came to see me, Davin, and you were complaining of a headache, I wouldn't just say, okay, well, why don't you take some Motrin? But if these certain red flags pop up, then make sure you let me know. We refer you to the emergency room. I'm more interested in trying to find out why your brain is turning on its alarm system and what I can do to try and help you resolve that. So, not that I wouldn't be interested in giving you pain relief, but I want to try and get rid of the headaches. I want to get to the point where you're not having headaches anymore and trying to get to the root cause. And so functional medicine is really a systems biology approach where we're looking at the cellular function, like what's happening with the mitochondria, what's happening with the nutrients, what's happening with the organelles, what's happening with the flow of nutrients throughout the system. It's foundational approaches on the lifestyle key elements. So we're looking at exercise and movement. We're looking at nutrition. We're looking at stress management. We're looking at sleep. We're looking at relationships, and those things combined, and all of that really then becomes functional medicine. So integrative medicine is kind of the big umbrella and within that is functional medicine.
No, I love that, and I think that's why really any one of the members of that integrative medicine team or any one of those approaches or philosophies that you bring in, is maybe a way to interpret someone's condition, or maybe what modalities or tools or levers to apply to help them resolve or feel better, right, as you're sort of rebalancing or fixing or restoring whatever it was that's at the root cause. So if you have additional practitioners like you mentioned, they can also help identify the root cause, right? So they can apply functional medicine within, even though we're all maybe coming at it from a slightly different perspective in an integrative way. So I love that. I think there's both people and philosophies and approaches to the integrative side, but the functional medicine piece, everyone can sort of join in, I guess, and sort of help, right, determine that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I got to a point where, despite the fact I actually enjoyed for the most part this second family medicine experience, I still felt like I was limited in what my dream was. I really had this vision at some point that I wanted to open up a more broad spectrum wellness center where we could incorporate a lot of different modalities and help people with different options. And it kind of what culminated it was I realized that I wanted to bring in IV nutritional therapy, and the practice was just like, no, that's too experimental. We were insurance based, and they just felt like it wasn't going to work. Um, so at that point, I decided, I think I'm gonna branch out on my own and open up my own clinic. It helped that I had run into a neighbor of mine who happened to be one of the sales representatives for a nutraceutical company that we were using. And she had said, wow, that's crazy because it's been my dream to open a wellness center as well. I've been in so many of these different practices, and I thought it would just be so great to be able to do one right and have this really, really exciting place. So we started talking and we started meeting, and it was about 15 months prior to us actually opening the practice that we started having monthly meetings to start planning for it. So it wasn't like I said, okay, I'm going to go open an integrative medicine center. And that summer, a few months later, I just opened it, right? There was a lot of thought and planning that went into it. But I'm going to back up because I forgot there was one incident that I still remember and I kind of use as the defining moment where I said, okay, no more. I can't practice this type of medicine anymore. And I remember sitting in my family medicine clinic with a patient. She came in, she was diabetic. She was already on three antihypertensive medications. She was on three diabetic medications. And we were going over her labs, and her A1C was, 8.7. And she's looking at me saying, what else can I do? Like, I am scared to death that I'm going to be on dialysis, or I'm going to have an amputation, or I'm going to lose my vision. What can I do? And I said, well, maybe we could do a little better on your diet. She says, I'm already doing the best I can on my diet. I'm already exercising. Like, what can I do? And I realized at that moment, literally my only option, my only tool was to put her on insulin, which I knew that the long-term consequences of insulin would not be great. Yes, we may save her from having an amputation or dialysis or even going blind, but the quality of her life was going to go downhill. And that just broke my heart. Like I go, this isn't why I got into medicine. I got into medicine to help optimize health, not to promote sickness and illness. And I knew at that moment I couldn't continue to do it. And so the combination, it still took a few years before things had worked out to the point where I was able to branch out on my own. I had enough courage, I had enough knowledge, I had enough ambition to be able to go out and open up our clinic. And so after 15 months of planning in the summer of 2014, we opened the Temecula Center for Integrative Medicine. And I haven't really looked back since.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And still pretty early in the cycle. I think you've been doing this a while already. And but what I hear in your story are maybe a couple of different catalysts, right? That sort of came from a couple different, areas potentially, right? One was just kind of philosophically for you, right? Like the way that you wanted to practice medicine, the way that you wanted to interact with your patients, you weren't really feeling satisfied or fulfilled, right? So that
No,
was
I really wasn't in alignment with that. And I knew early on, like I knew in undergraduate how
yeah,
I wanted to practice medicine. It wasn't aligned.
it hadn't presented itself yet. Yeah.
Yeah, the model that I was working within, the framework I was working within was not aligning with what my true passion and my true heart was telling me in terms of how I wanted to practice medicine. You're absolutely right.
Right. So that's kind of one key ingredient that you sort of need, to sort of be motivated to make your own path, is to sort of become aware of your own sort of truth, your authenticity of how you want to practice, right? So I think that's key, is sort of understanding yourself well enough to sort of align with your authentic, way that you want to practice medicine. So becoming aware of that, and that patient, as the situation becomes less aligned, more friction, more resistance, more kind of just not feeling, satisfied, maybe contributing to the burnout that all physicians were experiencing right during that time.
For sure.
So and then this other element, which I think, not that people can't do it alone. There are people, hopefully we'll interview a few that really did it on their own, had the courage and the capacity to do that. But I think having someone else, right, that shared your vision, that shared kind of your passion for a new direction, probably maybe helped it happen sooner. You probably would have got there eventually, but it sounds like maybe that's helped you, have like another person, kind of that mastermind effect. So maybe talk about that as well, and how that contributed, or you know,
Yeah, no, I think that certainly was the instigating kind of moment with the patient, but then the collaboration, I know some people are able to kind of do things on their own, and they love the ability to have total control of their situation. I tend to be, I'm more social. I tend to like to collaborate. I tend to like to have people to bounce ideas off. It feels a little safer to me. Maybe I'm just not as big a risk taker. So having this partner, Nicole Fox, and her husband want to partner. And then later on, we had a Dr. Hazen, who was a chiropractor in the community, who was willing to come and partner with us. And having that collaboration allowed me to have enough courage and um, just the resolve to actually move forward. And but in terms of the mastermind, it's interesting. So so we had that aspect, but then there was a lot that I did on my own that really kind of put me in a position to, I think, be successful in the ability to capture my dream and accomplish really my vision and my dream. And I think it really started with first just realizing what my vision was. And I remember Erica and I were at Rancho La Puerta, which is this health spa down in Tecate, Mexico. And as part of the health spa, they have a labyrinth. And I don't know if you've ever walked a labyrinth, but it's kind of like a maze. You kind of go back and forth, but unlike a maze, which has dead ends, this only has one route, and you start on it, and it takes you on this journey to the center of the labyrinth. When you get into the center, then you can do some meditation and some pondering, and then you kind of go back out. They have this little card that you read, and it said, it asks you to have, what is your intention? What is it that you want to accomplish, dream about, think about, meditate on while you walk the labyrinth? And so I was at this point where I was ready to move on. I knew I couldn't continue doing what had been doing in medicine. I wanted to change, and I had this kind of blurry vision of my wellness center. And so I said, all right, my intention is I want to discover what it is moving forward. And so I went in and I just started meditating while I was walking this labyrinth. And it takes about 5 to 10 minutes to get to the center. And then you can spend a little bit of time in the center, and then 5 to 10 minutes. Yeah. So it's about a 20 to 30 minute exercise. And it was in that experience that I realized exactly what I wanted to do and gained the resolve to actually to move forward. And there were still some pieces that had to be worked out in terms of how that was going to happen. I would say that was another critical piece, was this, going on a vision quest, taking the time to really evaluate what it is and dream about what it is that I wanted to do. And I think that's an important aspect of anybody who is an entrepreneur who's going to create something. You have to have a vision of what you want to do.
no, I love that, and I think, those places and retreats and settings are set up, right? Because the wisdom of the ages, right? They kind of know what helps people, um, align with their authentic self and find their purpose and define that vision. And yeah, I totally agree that this idea of you have to sort of create it in your mind first, and then before you can put it into reality. So I think that's really cool story that you actually had a moment you can even kind of look back to, where you kind of set that new course direction, and then again you didn't know maybe all the details, that you would need to put into place or how you were going to make
Right.
all that
Right.
happen, right? But you had a vision and you had a direction, and you had some energy around it by just taking that time, right, to really really contemplate it. um and so then, yeah, so then what next, like, in terms of, it sounds like you had some partners who shared your vision. You're in a spot now where you've got a current job, and now you got to leave and start a new business. And like, what were some of the early challenges, or was there like some obstacles that maybe you didn't think you'd overcome early on that.
I think one of the biggest obstacles was our business model, right? What were we going to do? Were we going to do just a cash only clinic? Were we going to do insurance based? Were we going to do take managed care insurance, or just take fee for service or PPO? It was, we had to kind of work through that. We worked through different scenarios. We did some patient surveys, and ultimately, what we realized is that, in listening to our colleagues and listening to the patients, that a lot of the cash-based, clinics, at least that we were exposed to, ended up serving three populations: the healthy, the wealthy, and the desperate. But as soon as the desperate got well enough that they didn't need to come back to the clinic, they stopped paying. And the healthy only came once a year, and the wealthy wanted you at their beck and call. So it just didn't seem to be kind of the model that we had decided we had wanted to follow. And part of what allowed us to kind of figure that out is we early on came up with a mission statement. So I'm just going to read you what our mission statement is for the Temecula Center for Integrated Medicine, because this is important, because it became a guiding light for us, and helped us stay on track in terms of how we were going to create our business. And so our mission statement is: by integrating emerging science with traditional medicine, TCIM exists as a passionate group of holistic practitioners with a patient-centered, nutritionally founded approach, utilizing a unique genetic expression of each individual so health and vitality is maximized. Our treatment is targeted towards optimizing wellness and preventing chronic disease while nurturing positive health outcomes for patients in our local and extended communities. So when we put that together, we realized that in order to really treat our community, we needed to take insurance. And so we started looking at different ways to do that. And we felt like just staying in the fee for service and the straight Medicare was a way that we could do that. And it's been successful for us. We've been able to be open. We've been open for over 10 years now. We've been doing uh, taking insurance. It's been a challenge doing integrative and functional medicine, taking insurance, and there were years that we were not sure we were going to make a profit, but for the most part, we've been fairly successful. So I think that's one of the things that really kind of helped. But that was one of the biggest challenges. One of the biggest hurdles was, okay, how are we going to generate revenue? And so we decided to stay in the insurance world. And I know that's not right for everybody, but that's what felt right for us at the time.
Yeah, and I think, again, maybe the time that you started, right, probably played a role. And also, the community you were already in, the patients you were already serving potentially, right? So a lot of things factor into these decisions.
Right.
I love your mission statement. I feel like, it probably, could serve as almost like the mission statement for all of integrative and functional medicine. you really hit all the key elements. I loved it. It was beautiful. And having been to your center, I feel like you guys have delivered on that. How would you say that your uh, you know center there, your practice has evolved, from when you started, and you started out with a great mission, and I think you started out with some, different practitioners, chiropractic, lifestyle educators, et cetera. And how have you evolved, or where are some areas maybe that you've seen the biggest change or move from where you started?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think when we first started, we had myself, a chiropractor, and a lifestyle educator, um, and that was kind of what we started on. And shortly after we opened, there was another new functional medicine physician who had moved into the area and was looking for a job and was interviewing with Kaiser and with us. And I was like, wow, that was what a difference. And so it seemed to me like a no-brainer, but we were a startup, so she had to take a bit of a risk, but she did, and she was fantastic. And she worked in our clinic for 7 years and did a great job and had a great following. I think we started off small, and we just we always thought about, okay, if we're going to add something in, if we're going to bring a new practitioner or a new service or a new type of medicine, we always thought first about, okay, is this going to be good for the patient? Second, is this going to be good for the practitioner? And third, can we make money doing it, right? I mean, ultimately, it's a business. So if it only met the first two criteria, but it was going to cost us money, didn't necessarily make business sense to bring it in. But that's kind of how things evolved. When we first started, we were not doing IV nutritional therapy, despite the fact that being one of the reasons I left the other practice. It took about a year before we actually started doing some IV nutritional therapy, and we started off with just doing pushes of Myers cocktails in patient exam rooms. That evolved into us getting a 3-chair IV room, which then evolved into us building an IV suite, which then evolved into us expanding into the next space. And now we have, you know, basically 2 clinic spaces, one of which is almost completely IV nutritional therapy. And so it's really kind of grown. We add, we had chiropractic, but then we added on acupuncture, and then we added in massage therapy. We had naturopaths join us, and so now we're at a point where we have still two physicians. We have 4 different nurse practitioners, and then we have a chiro acupuncturist. Unfortunately, insurance changed the rules on massage therapy reimbursement, so we were no longer able to keep that in. But we still do in insurance-based nutritional intravenous therapy, and that's been really successful.
Yeah, I think maybe in our next podcast we can dive in a little deeper to understand a little bit more about the nuances of running a practice, insurance based versus not, right? And maybe some of our other
Right.
guests will help us understand that as well. But I think our listeners, our future listeners, will would probably enjoy understanding kind of the pros and cons between an insurance model versus a cash model, and where you guys were able to sort of maximize that and still offer as much as possible for patients. But I think maybe as our last topic, um, being that the first step is the hardest. I think what you built, obviously there was demand and a need for it, and people responded to it well, and you probably have tons of success stories that you could share. But I think maybe just talk about how you were able to attract patients and get the word out. Like, what was your marketing strategy? Like, how did because I think there's a lot
Yeah.
of people who are really good at what they do, but if they can't sell it and no one knows about them, then they don't have a business. So I think that would be interesting for me and other people to understand how you made the leap and then actually filled your practice, or was there sort of pent up demand and it just filled up sort of organically, or did you guys have to figure something out?
I mean, part of it was pent up demand. I mean, I'd been in family practice, two different groups for 6 years already in the community. I already had a following. People specifically sought me out because I was more integrative and holistic minded. At that time, I had not completed my functional medicine certification, but I had started my education. I had also been, attending multiple different integrative medicine courses and was becoming more and more of an expert in integrative medicine. I was doing some teaching. So I think that there was already kind of this demand, and certainly we've seen this, and it's just exploded since COVID. The demand for integrative and functional medicine. People want to become healthier, and they want their practitioner to help them become healthier. So I think from a marketing strategy, we didn't have to do a lot of marketing because there was so much word of mouth and so much demand for what we were doing, and there wasn't really anything. There still isn't really anything like what we're doing in our community of 500,000 people. So we had a pretty big pool to draw from, as it is right now. And if anybody's listening and they want to come work for us, please reach out, because we have way more patients who want to be seen in our practice than we have practitioners that can care for them. But we didn't do much. We had a Facebook page, we had a website, we were doing some social media, but most of it was word of mouth in terms of marketing when we first got started. I think that it's a lot harder if you're just starting and you don't have a following, and you haven't started to build up that reputation. I think so. For me, it was a little easier. I was able to kind of jump from one practice into another, but we still had to build out our clinic. We had to spend time and effort, planning that. Again, I was grateful to have other people helping me out so I could continue to work full time while we were preparing and getting ready to make the jump. But that's really kind of what we were doing, and it was I think you have to have an entrepreneurial mind in order to get out of the conveyor belt type of medicine. And what really made the difference for me was the shift, realizing that despite the fact that I have knowledge, there's a certain amount of selling of my knowledge to my patients, right? It's not just, oh, here's your plan, and then I walk out of the room. There's an element of why that plan is going to be successful for them that you have to sell to them and get their buy-in in order for there to be the success. And so I think that was another one of the transitions that was a little bit difficult initially, particularly selling supplements in our clinic. It took me a little while from an ethical standpoint to feel comfortable with that. And then I realized, okay, they're going to go buy this somewhere else. I'm doing all the educating. I might as well get paid for all this education that I have and the information that I'm sharing. Once I kind of shifted that, then it became easier. And it's not that we're selling to, try and finagle or get an extra buck. We're just selling what we feel passionate about that's really going to help them. We're trying to inspire them to partner with us in order to make good choices in their healthcare journey to really make a difference.
Yeah, no, and I think I love that, and I think this idea of selling to the patient, especially when you guys started, right? So even though there
Right.
was demand for you, maybe your reputation, people also, I think, in my experience in years on the technology side and as a primary care doctor, hearing my patients complain about the system, right? Like unhappy with whatever, right? Like how hard it is to get an appointment, or no one called me back, or my doctor doesn't listen to me, in the
Right.
5 minutes has it. So there were all these other issues that were unrelated to even the type of care that they were getting.
Right.
So that may have caused people to say, hey, I want to try something different, right? I want to try something new, different. I like Dr. Lundquist. I'm going to follow him. But then this idea of like, hey, I'm not just going to give you a pill. Like there's a whole other aspect that, why you need to do these things, why this will make you feel better in the long run, maybe not tomorrow, right? And
Totally.
I think that's really interesting. So, well, this has been great. I think, you and I may have just have some more conversations between us, because I think there's a lot more here to learn. But we will have a lot of other guests that will have similar stories, right? So some of this will, more of my questions at least, will get answered by other people. And I think when we turn the tables and I have a chance to tell my story as well, there's some common themes that will pop up. Any last words or thoughts?
Well, I was just going to say, if any of our listeners have specific questions or topics that they would love to have answered, I think it would be great to have you put that in the chat section or put it into the notes section. But I think the final thought is really the reason the first step is the hardest, I think, is because of the fear associated. I remember, despite having a wait list from day one and breaking even and actually making a profit 6 months into our practice being open, I still had this fear that one day I was going to walk in the clinic and nobody was going to show up. I don't know why. It was an irrational fear, but I think it's just natural for all of us to sometimes just think the worst, right? We just do. And so sometimes it's just really hard. We gotta take that big first step. And I think I love what I do now. I don't have burnout. I'm really inspired by the interactions I have with my patients. And I think that, somebody once said, success isn't just about what you accomplish in your life. It's about what you inspire others to do. And it's not just success, but it's fulfillment, right? I feel fulfilled when I'm able to inspire other people to live a healthier life. And I'm grateful that I was able to build a framework that allowed me to do that, because I wasn't getting that in the previous framework that I was in. So I hope this has been helpful and people have enjoyed this, and look forward to seeing your feedback and your comments. And we look forward to, we have so many good guests up ahead. Jeff Bland is going to be on here. We're going to get Jeff Glad. We're going to have Jill Carnahan. We're going to have some great guests to tell us their experience and how they have gotten to the point where they're making money doing integrative and functional medicine. Everybody has a different journey. And everybody has, done it a little differently. And I'm super excited and appreciative of, my good friend, Chris Magrita, who is allowing us to post these podcasts initially under his podcast, and appreciate. And we look forward to interviewing him and hearing his story. He does pediatrics in a very busy, underserved community in North Carolina, and he's still able to practice functional medicine. So it's going to be interesting to hear his story and how he's managing that. So many good stories to come. Can't wait for you to hear them. And we look forward to it. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Erik, for inviting me to join you on this journey. And we will, in addition to having it available as an audio-only type podcast, we'll also have a YouTube channel. We'll probably post it on my YouTube channel, which I'll be launching shortly, as just another way to get it out there. But I think also so that they can see how much better looking I am than you. Besides that, also, I think on YouTube,
that's okay. I have a better voice.
It's a great place for people to post questions, right? And so hopefully that way also we can, collect questions and get a little more back and forth, even feedback or suggestions how to make it better or what people want to hear. So looking forward to that as well.
All right, we'll see you on the next episode.